Welcome to Diabetes Primetime, everyone. One of the biggest challenges of diabetes is the way the numbers can vary so much, even when we're trying to do everything right. Tonight, we're talking with diabetes care and education specialist Melinda Maryniuk about all the different things that can affect blood sugar and what people with diabetes should know about them. Folks, before we get started, though, tell me where you're watching from tonight and what's on your mind. And leave a yes in the comments if you check your blood sugar at home. Melinda, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Ansley.
So let's start off by talking about the major factors that can affect blood sugar numbers that people with diabetes can do something about. And those are kind of the big three: food, exercise, and medicine. How do each of these things affect blood sugar?
They all do affect blood sugar, all three, by at times making it go up and at times making it go down. But different factors in food, for example, can make it go up and go down. In exercise, the type of exercise, the duration of exercise can affect it, and certainly the medicines. Now, most medicines are designed to make it go down. However, if you forget to take the medicine, which is not uncommon, or you don't take the dose you're supposed to, it can go up. So really, all three things can affect the blood glucose either by raising it or lowering it.
So many things to talk about here. We're going to talk a whole lot more about food and then all the other things that can impact glucose. But first, We're going to do our trivia question. If you answer tonight's trivia question, we have a very special giveaway. You will be entered to win a free blood glucose monitor and 600 test strips from Argray. All you have to do is answer tonight's trivia question to be entered. That question is, true or false? In some cases, skipping meals might actually cause your blood sugar to increase. Is that true or false? Can skipping meals cause blood sugar to rise in some cases? Leave an answer for us in the comments, and just for answering, you will be entered to win that free meter and 600 test strips. And trivia and this amazing giveaway tonight is brought to you by Argray. As your diabetes health ally, Argray helps make diabetes management easy and affordable. Visit argrayusa.com/cost to receive a free blood glucose monitor along with wellness materials to help simplify your diabetes management. All right, before we really dive into all these factors that can affect blood glucose, Melinda, I want to ask you about something that we've heard happens often to people. They check their blood sugar and they see it's a certain number, and then they check a minute later and it's a different number on the meter. Why does this happen?
It can be really frustrating because you want that confirmation that, oh my goodness, am I really a 78? And you check it again, and this time you're a 92 or whatever.
And that seems like a big difference.
It does. It does. And there are a couple things. You have to recognize that meters can give you about a 20% difference in numbers each time you take it. And that's still considered accurate. And so there's just a normal variation that you can expect to see. So it would not be considered a fault or a flaw in the meter if you're seeing a difference in numbers like between 20%. So if you had 100, anywhere between 80 and 120 would be sort of considered, okay with that. Now, there's a lot of other things that could be going on. First of all, if you checked it and you had not really washed your hands well and you had something on your hands and then you checked it again and whatever it was that might have been on your hands and interfering with that result, because maybe you'd wiped them or washed them or rubbed them on your pants, ideally wash them, that's going to make a difference. So we sometimes forget the fact that having clean hands is really important to make sure that we get consistent results. And one of the best ways to check to see if your meter is actually giving true results is to bring it with you to your doctor's appointment, and the same time they do a test there, check your blood sugar at the same time. And when you get your result back from the doctor's office, see how close your result is. If it's within 20%, then you also know it's accurate.
That's great advice. And what about control solution? Do you recommend that people check their meter every so often with control solution from the manufacturer?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, interestingly, most people don't even pay attention to the control solution that comes, with it. And it is ideally recommended that each time you open a new bottle of test strips, that you match it with a control solution. Control solution is just like, checking with blood. It's not real blood, but it's formulated to be like blood. So it should should give you a number within a small range. And if it does that, you also know that the test strips are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, that should be done really with each new bottle of test strips.
Or if you're feeling like maybe your meter isn't as accurate as it should be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's get back to talking about food. And specifically, let's talk about how different foods can impact different people differently. So for some people, oatmeal might really cause your blood sugar to rise, while other people, oatmeal's not a problem, and it's, pasta that really causes blood spikes. How can someone figure out what foods are better for their specific body and situation?
So we do know that the carbohydrate foods are the ones that impact your blood glucose the most. So those are your whole grains, your starches, your fruits, your milk, such as yogurt and regular milk and sweets. But they can have very different effects on different people. Some people will find that foods that have more fiber in them will not have as much impact on their blood glucose than foods that are more refined. So in general, that's why we push the foods that are higher fiber sources. Now, most of the foods that we eat are not pure sources of carbohydrate. They're usually combined with something, some protein, some fat. And the more protein or fat that is mixed with a carbohydrate, say it's a slice of bread with some peanut butter on it, that peanut butter will slow down the absorption of the carbohydrate in that bread. So it's a matter of sort of give and take and testing and trying and seeing what combinations of food are best for you and your blood sugar.
So let's talk a little nitty gritty here. Let's say that I want to figure out whether you mentioned toast with peanut butter, one of my favorite snacks. I want to figure out, what does that do to my blood sugar? How should I use my meter to figure out what impact that snack has on my blood sugar?
Well, the best thing to do is what we call paired checking. And I know, Ansley, that's something that you talk about a lot, and people in this community should be familiar with it. But it basically means doing just a little test on yourself and checking your blood sugar before, whether it's a meal or a snack like toast and peanut butter, or if it's your breakfast and you're used to having oatmeal with blueberries and milk, and you really want to see what's the impact of that particular food or snack on your blood sugar. So check it before, say 15 minutes before you're going to eat, and then check it 2 hours afterwards. And that 2-hour span should give you a good idea of how much it's raising your blood sugar. Now, don't count it when you've just done it once. You really need to do it 2 or 3 times to see if there really is a pattern, because there are also many other things that could be affecting your blood glucose. If it's surprisingly high, it might be because you have a cold or an illness coming on, and that's what's causing the blood sugar to go up. So don't just do a paired check once and say,
I've got the answer.
Such and such cause oatmeal makes my blood sugar rise too high. You really don't know until you've done it a few times. And it's also really important to keep the other elements of the meal the same. Don't have the toast with peanut butter and then have a glass of orange juice with it and forget to count it when you're thinking about what impact it might have been with it. But it becomes a really great exercise to identify, favorite foods that you love, things that you really want to have that you think might impact your blood sugar too much. Then combine it with something that maybe will have less of an impact. So your protein foods and your fat foods, and I can give you a couple examples later, would be good to mix with those higher carb foods so you can have less spike in your blood sugar.
Well, actually, that was my next question, because I know there are some foods that are really good for us, like fruit or whole grains, that may raise our blood sugar kind of more than is ideal. So share some of those tips with us about how to minimize, big spikes from otherwise healthy foods.
People ask these questions all the time, like, I can't have bananas or apples or watermelon or blueberries because it's all carbohydrates, going to spike my blood sugar. And first of all, the fruit is so healthy and so good for you. We really want you to have them, but we want you to learn how it affects your blood sugar and maybe what foods to combine it with. So, for example, a great food to combine with fruit, if you are eating it by itself as a snack, is to have a handful of almonds, for example, or walnuts, some kind of nut, which is really no carbohydrate, just a source of protein and fat. Or if you're having apple or peanut butter, apples or bananas, one of my favorite things to do is just spread a little bit of peanut butter on the apple slices or a little bit of peanut butter on the banana slices. So that also will lessen the impact of that fruit. So it's really about finding the combinations of the carb food along with protein and fat, as well as maybe saying, okay, I can't eat 2 cups of blueberries, which is what I would love to have, but a cup might be better. And speaking of blueberries, one thing I love to do is keep them in the freezer, because popping a cold frozen blueberry in your mouth, I find that I don't eat as much, and it's really satisfying on a hot day.
The flavor's more intense.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
So portion size and combinations are the 2 things that I hear you say, which I think are really, really great advice.
Exactly.
So when it comes to managing diabetes, we talk a lot about what we eat, just like we just did, but can when we eat have an impact on blood glucose?
Yes, it definitely can. And in fact, we're learning more and more about that. We're trying to urge people to think about having the larger meals at breakfast and lunch when at all possible, and trying to minimize, especially late night snacking, which is not going to be as good for the blood sugar.
So pushing dinner a little earlier might be a good idea as well, or is it more just avoiding that late night snacking that really has an impact?
I think both. Both is important.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that you just have to have a really small dinner, but maybe a little bit less than if you're really used to having a large meal or skipping lunch and having a large dinner. It would be really better to think about, moderate size meal. And if you are used to eating at 9:00 at night, that would be considered too late. And I would try to move that to an hour or 2 earlier, whatever your mealtime is. I'm not going to say, okay, 4:30, everybody, dinner time. But if you are eating 8:00 or later, I'd urge that to be earlier, especially if you are seeing unusual high glucoses in the morning. If your numbers are within target, don't worry about when you're eating. So it's a little bit of information to use for troubleshooting and try to figure out why are my morning sugars high?
All right, so we hear all the time someone eats the exact same meal or the exact same snack and they get 2 wildly different numbers just a day or a week later. And that really has to do with all the other things that can affect blood glucose: sleep, stress, being sick, all of those things. So let's talk about those now. And let's start with sleep, because we've been hearing a lot lately about sleep and insulin resistance. Tell us, Melinda, how can a poor night's sleep affect our blood sugar the next day?
Again, Ansley, I want to point out that all of these things don't happen the same way for everybody, but we are seeing a trend that more people are experiencing higher blood sugars after poor night's sleep. So if you have a really short night's sleep or really erratic sleeping patterns, there's going to be more insulin resistance. I don't know exactly why there is. I think there's a surge of hormones, which is often the answer to a lot of things with diabetes. Our body is responding in a way, and the hormone release kicks out additional glucose. So it's something it's easy to say, make sure you get enough sleep, but to recognize that could be a reason for unexplained high glucose levels.
And this gets back to that point of when you were saying, when you're, checking in pairs to see how a food or meal affects you, to do it multiple times. Because if you did it on a morning where you got a poor night's sleep before, you may see a higher, spike than you would normally.
And to not react to any one set of numbers. You wake up in the morning, your number's high, and you think, oh, well, obviously it's because I had a poor night's sleep. Not necessarily. It could be because you are coming down with a cold. It could be because, oh, I forgot to take my dose of medicine last night. So common. And so we are often quick to blame ourselves that we did something wrong, or to point the finger at something and say, well, it must be because I didn't get enough sleep, or it must be because XYZ. And the difficult message to hear, but to understand, is that there are many factors that can be affecting your glucose. And It really means finding a pattern to see if it happens multiple times before you know if it's for sure that sleep might be contributing or poor sleep might be contributing to your high glucose levels.
So, in fact, you said there are multiple things that can affect blood glucose. And in fact, according to the folks at Diatribe, there are 42 different things that can affect blood sugar. So, they've put together an awesome PDF that is, in fact, called 42 Things That Can Affect Blood Sugar. You can download it for free. We'll put a link to it in the comments. But they really have a great explanation of all the different factors, many of which Melinda is talking about tonight. But if you'd like to learn more, be sure to go check out that PDF. And for those of you who have just joined us, we're here with dietitian and diabetes care and education specialist Melinda Maryniuk. We're talking about all the different things that can affect blood sugar numbers. If you missed it earlier, we are doing a giveaway for a free meter and 600 test strips tonight. You can be entered into that drawing by answering our trivia question. So that question again, just in case you missed it, true or false, in some cases, skipping meals might actually cause your blood glucose to increase. Is that true or false? Put your answer in the comments and you will be entered into our drawing. All right, Melinda, two other things that can impact blood glucose are stress and illness. Let's talk about stress first. If we're in a period of intense stress, or even just kind of that chronic low level, we're trying to keep a lot of balls in the air stress, what should we know about how that may be impacting our blood glucose?
So certainly stress can, again, start releasing hormones, adrenaline, epinephrine, the fight or flight response hormones, and that increases blood sugar, sometimes dramatically, sometimes just a little bit. And so in general, we say that stressful or very emotional issues can increase your blood sugar. But the other thing to keep in mind is that stress, the way we respond to stress. So, for example, if we're feeling really blue about something, we may not exercise the way we were used to. We may not eat the way we're used to. We may skip meals. We may not feel like taking our medicine or whatever. So, if we're not eating, the blood sugar is going to go down. If we're not exercising the way that we're used to, it may go up. Or if we're exercising a lot more because we're feeling so blue, we're just going out for a really long walk and we're going down. So know that the usual response to stress is an increase in blood sugar, but how we choose to handle the stress in our lives, the decision we make about food, exercise, and medicine will also have an effect on blood sugar.
I think that's such a great point. And our mutual friend, endocrinologist Dr. Rich Jackson, talks a lot about how sometimes the higher numbers that we attribute to stress are actually because we're not doing the same self-care behaviors because we're under stress. We don't have time maybe to meal prep or get that exercise. So sometimes I think it's important to recognize just by continuing to take care of ourselves, we can mitigate some of the other impacts of stress.
Right. Yeah, recognizing that it's not as clear cut as, I'm going through a stressful situation, my blood sugar will be up. It may, but maybe something else too.
So we know that being sick can affect blood glucose. So if someone is sick, and whether that means just a mild cold or a fever, should they be checking their blood sugar more often?
Absolutely. That's that is the first thing we recommend, because you want to identify if it is starting to creep up. And because if you really do get significantly sick, not just like a little sniffle for one day, but if you really are coming down with something, your blood sugar could creep up to what I would call a more dangerously high level. And I'm talking over 250. We tell patients that if they are running over 250, that's the time to give the doctor a call, especially if you see two of those numbers in the same day. Not necessarily the first one, but if you have any concerns, give a call. And it's during times of illness when it's more likely to see the spike in those glucose levels.
So as you said, give our doctor a call. It occurred to me, we really haven't talked about, when we're doing that paired checking before a meal and 2 hours afterwards, where do we get the number, either from our doctor or diabetes care and education specialist? Where do we get our target number? Kind of like what we should be shooting for, either in the morning or after a meal. Do you recommend that someone ask their doctor, like, what is my target?
Yes. I mean, for most people, the targets for when you wake up in the morning are going to be like between 80 and 130. It can vary for individuals. Some people will have a higher range, particularly if you've had diabetes for a long time, if you're taking insulin, or if you have a risk for hypoglycemia, you might have a slightly higher target. Your target after meals is Generally, you want to keep the blood sugar below 150, 180. Before bed, you might have another target. Your physician or your nurse practitioner is going to be making sure you know what your targets are. And it's really important that each person, if you don't have targets, ask, what should my blood sugar be? And know that there's 3 different numbers, usually your fasting, your after meal target, and your bedtime target. Not everybody needs to check at bedtime, especially if you do take insulin. Those are the individuals that are more likely to have to check at bedtime. If you're just taking, metformin, rarely would you have to do that.
Okay, so folks, if you don't know what those targets are, definitely talk to your physician or nurse practitioner. And that's just another opportunity for Melinda and I to talk about our favorite topic, which is why you should go see a diabetes care and education specialist, because they are awesome at helping you kind of figure out what's happening, what your numbers ideally should be in that range, and also what you might be able to tweak in your life to get them where they should be. We know the dawn phenomenon for many people can impact blood sugar in the morning. Can you explain, you talked about it earlier, can you explain a little bit about what it is and what people who are seeing high numbers in the morning can do?
So the dawn phenomena happens not to everybody, but many of us, whether you have diabetes or not, I think about it a little bit of getting the body ready to wake up. So between 4 and 5 in the morning, sort of the body sort of knows, all right, we got to start revving up, kicking out some hormones to get the body ready to do a day's work of activities. And those hormones will trigger the blood sugar to start to rise. And for some individuals, that rise is higher than ideal. And so when you do wake up at 7 or 8, whatever, and you're checking your blood sugar, you're like, what? Why am I at 160? It's higher than when I went to bed in the morning. And if you see that pattern over time, it could be the dawn phenomenon pushing it up. It also could be that the meal that you ate the night before was too big, or the snack was too late at night and too much carbohydrate, or too much fat and protein, which took a longer time to digest. Or, it could be the fact that I forgot to take my evening medication. Part of what I hope you're hearing through this conversation is that you're going to begin to run a little list of things through your head as you're troubleshooting and trying to think about, why is my number out of target? Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? The dawn phenomena is one thing that might cause the blood sugars to be high in the morning, but it could be other things as well.
All right, so I'm going to put in a plug here for a video that we have about what to do when numbers are higher in the morning. We put it together with our wonderful endocrinologist, Dr. Rich Jackson. So we'll link to that. If that's something that's a challenge for you, watch it. We have several different experiments that you can run at home and figure out what might be causing it. Melinda, as always, this has been such a helpful show. Thank you so much for sharing your practical suggestions with us. You've cleared up a lot of information and certainly given us a lot to think about. So thank you.
Thanks, Ansley.
Folks, here is the answer to tonight's trivia question. True or false, in some cases, skipping meals might actually cause your blood glucose to increase? The answer to that is true. Another reason to check your blood sugar at home and also see a certified diabetes care and education specialist to get a lifestyle plan that's right for you. Folks, we will be back for a very special show on September 29th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be talking to a diabetes care and education specialist and a person with diabetes about low blood sugar, what can cause it, and how to treat it. I hope you'll be able to join us. It's going to be a lot of great learning.